Welcome to the Epic Success Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Shannon Irvin. All right, we just had an amazing Modern Money Making Methods Summit where I brought some of my dear friends on like Pat Flynn, Sean Cannell, Heather Torres, Christina John Dolly, and Sarah Robbins. We all talked about what was working now. So that's what this week's podcast is all about. It's about cracking that six-figure code as a coach, as a course creator, or a service provider. So here we go. The one, the only Pat Flynn is in the back room in the green room, ready to come on right now. And I'm excited. If you don't know Pat Flynn, where have you been? Number two. No, I'm just kidding. But Pat he started out online creating smart passive income. Actually, his story is really interesting in a totally different industry in the engineering field that he was in, helping people pass an exam. And I think he fell in love with helping people in this way and started sharing how he was doing it and sharing his income at one point through Smart Passive Income. And then his podcast, Smart Passive Income. If you're not following that, you definitely need to listen. He teaches what he does and what works. So as he was doing his podcast, he started teaching podcasts, then affiliates, and then how to create a course. Basically, if you're creating something online, you need to be in Pat's world. And I met him also the same time I met Sean. I met Pat at the same event. See the power of being in the room at an event. So I met Pat there and bought his first course at the time, which was Power Up Podcasting. And now just a few courses later, Pat Flynn is in the house. So Pat, thank you for coming on the summit, the Modern Money Making Methods Summit today.
My pleasure. And I wore the right shirt apparently because we're talking about serving our audiences. So that's perfect. And I'm here to continue to do that.
Yeah, I did not set that up at all, but it has been an absolute through line of how about we actually see people on the other side as people that we need to serve and that we're privileged to speak into their lives, to serve, to help, to just say, please don't have the pain, the experience, the long suffering that I did. Let yours be shorter. And I know you certainly did that for me in my podcast and growing my business. Pat's my own personal business mentor. And I'm going to just give you the stage because it's what you do best.
No, thank you. It's all about connection and realizing there are human beings on the other end. And in this presentation, I want to talk about something that all of us human beings want, and that is community, coming together. And the idea that you, the creator, the influencer, the authority in your space, can be the one to step up to create a safe space for your people to come together to find each other. So I want to tell you a quick story. This is 2019, after over a decade of being an entrepreneur, and doing a lot of things on my own, blogging myself, podcasting here right from my home office, YouTube videos and things like that. But I never really brought my community together. And it wasn't until 2019 that I had this idea to, put on an event. So I put on FlynnCon. Actually, Shannon was there. A lot of my students were there, and we had 500 entrepreneurs fly in to San Diego, which kind of blew me away. The fact that people took time out of their own year to fly to San Diego, to post up in a hotel and to hang out with me and other entrepreneurs and some amazing, amazing people. Shalene was there on stage and a lot of other people to learn and to be together. We had this really stacked lineup. We had some amazing content, but the one piece of feedback I got that was more positive than anything was this idea that the best parts of this event were the things that happened in the foyer in between the talks, in between the presentations, right? The best parts were the conversations I had with people between the sessions in the foyer. Now, I knew that was going to be, a big part of this event. We scheduled it this way. We had 1.5 hour breaks in between every presentation because when I go to events, those are the things that I love the most and the things that I can take away from the most, the relationships that are built in the hallway. And there were conversations happening in the hallway, which was really amazing. And a lot of connections were made, a lot of business partnerships were made at this event. And that's really what this is about. When you bring people together, you never know really what the magic can be. And of course, when you facilitate these interactions and these conversations, it does nothing but heighten your brand too, because you and your brand are the connector there. And then of course, we sold tickets for the next year, 2020. But of course, 2020 happened and there were major changes coming that none of us expected. So unfortunately, we had to delay the event because we thought it was just going to not be so long until we were able to do it again. But of course, 2021 came around and the event was delayed another year and we decided to scrap it. But we didn't want to scrap the idea of those conversations in the hallway because those were some magical moments. And I just felt bad that we weren't able to offer those opportunities once again. So what we ended up doing, around this time was realizing that everybody was becoming isolated. People started feeling very lonely and lost during this time. There were a couple new softwares that came out during this time. Clubhouse, of course, came out during this time to connect people. And we saw just how popular that was. It still is around, still is very popular, but not quite as much as it was back then. And then Circle, this is a company that allows you to create your own community outside of Facebook, one that I've gotten very involved with. We host our community there at SPI Pro, and I'm also now an advisor for this company, which is really amazing. And this is when SPI Pro was born. In July of 2020, we realized that, wow, we weren't going to be able to put on these events in person anymore, but we wanted to offer those opportunities for people to connect. So we launched SPI Pro at spipro.com to become a safe space for entrepreneurs to come together. And we decided that we wanted to position it as those hallway conversations, but ones that you can get access to at any time from anywhere in the world. You don't need to fly in. You don't need to come to an event. You don't need to pay a ton of money, just a small investment to come in to have access to each other. And my team is there. And actually, this has become the center of our business. This has become the biggest revenue generator in our business as of late. And I wanted to share the ins and outs of community building with you and how that differs from audience building and how you can potentially find this to be an opportunity for you as well. What was interesting is when we had the idea of creating SPI Pro, we ran a survey. We said, well, what do you want inside of this community? We know we want to bring these people together, but we listed a whole bunch of things, including content, right? Many people think memberships and communities are about content, taking the stuff that you might have in your course and putting it there or other curriculum. And we found out that through the thousands of people that we surveyed, that only 5% wanted more content. Most people didn't want more content at all. They wanted the connection and the community, and they wanted to find other people like them. And of course, this is just an inherent human thing. We all want to feel like we belong, but if there is no place to go to where we can find people like us, then we still continue to feel isolated and lonely. So my question to you that I'll ask now, and again at the end of this presentation is, well, will you be the person to step up to bring your community together? Now, many people know my story, but many people don't. I started smartpassiveincome.com in 2008 as a result of getting laid off from an architecture job that I had that I absolutely loved. But I started Smart Passive Income because my first online business was helping people pass an architectural exam that did very well. And a lot of people asked me how I did that. So in 2008, it started with a blog, and here is that blog. Later, I created a YouTube channel at Pat Flynn. You can see there. And then, of course, the podcast, which is where most people know me from, the Smart Passive Income podcast. We've had since several other podcasts created under the SPI Media brand and over 65 million total downloads, which is pretty insane. I've also written a few books, which is cool. This is one of my books, Superfans on the Right, being held by Daryl Leaves and Mr. Beast. If you don't know who that is, he is the #1 creator on YouTube right now, and that was really fun to see. And we also offer courses. We have courses. Shannon was a student and is a very successful graduate of Power Up Podcasting. We have affiliate marketing stuff, email marketing stuff, but a lot of this stuff is just me creating something that then other people consume, and then they could consume something else or move on. There is really no connection to other people. Even the students, they have access to each other through, initially it was a Facebook group, and then we moved everybody over to Circle. But even then, it wasn't really for the purpose of community. It was just to answer questions that people had. But again, in July of 2020, we launched SPI Pro, and it's been one of the most amazing things we've ever done, the best feedback I've ever gotten from anything that I've ever created. And there are hundreds of members now who connect every single day, and new wins and new connections and new business partners are being found all the time. So initially, of course, blog, podcast, video, books, courses, these are all things that, again, that I sort of spent time creating and putting out there into the world. I'm very grateful that many people found these things, but I was missing that community element that sort of wraps all these things together. And like I said, the community is definitely becoming the center of our business now because we're seeing the most impact there, right? We have really great courses. We have some of the highest completion rates in the industry. However, still, they're very low compared to what we all want, which is 100% completion, right? We want everybody who takes our courses to actually go through them and find success. But with the community there, we are now able to help that along and also provide value through the connections, and the recurring income that comes from community has been something that we've never experienced before. So now we have predictability in our income, in addition to seeing the biggest impact that we've ever had on people. And Circle.so is the platform we're using. There's many others, Mighty Networks and others. We prefer Circle.so because it is sort of a beautiful combination of what Facebook Groups is, but without the noise and without the craziness there and without the, corporation, and Slack, right? The organization of Slack, the different channels, or in Circle, they call them spaces, and it has a lot of the same capabilities as Facebook groups. And now the community is growing because of the content that I created before, the content that is out there. It is evergreen, and it's now promoting SPI Pro, but SPI Pro is now also finding its way into the content. There was a lot of discussion already today I saw about, highlighting your community members, testimonials, telling story. A lot of our success stories that end up on the content side, on the free side, are actually success stories from SPI Pro, which then people go, well, what is SPI Pro? Let's go check that out. Oh, wow, that's the caliber of people that's in there that it's creating. Cool. Let me check it out and apply at spipro.com. And again, it's going very, very well. And again, remember, these are the humans that are now together. This was a picture in Las Vegas a number of years back, back when Blog World Expo was happening, where it was like an opportune moment to bring people together. So I shared a couple tweets, a couple Facebook posts at the time, and we had hundreds of people come to a buffet to hang out with each other. And again, the cool thing is I could just sit back and relax, but everybody was getting value because they were finding other people like them. That is the benefit. And somebody in your industry needs to step up to bring your people together. And if you don't do it, somebody else will. And of course, this just does nothing but heighten your brand. But I want to talk about the differences between audience building and community building, because they are very different inherently. And they do come with some pros and cons if you choose to go down this route. And it will help you position yourself in a way that allows you to understand, well, how does your audience then feed into the community and vice versa? So number one, the biggest difference is that the objectives are different, right? With audience building, like podcast, blogging, even social media, people come to find the content that they're looking for, right? They're looking for answers. They're looking for solutions. When it comes to community building, whether it's a free community that you use for lead gen or a paid community, people come for the connection, for belonging. That is really the primary thing when it comes to community, is the communication and the findability part of people like them. So that is a huge difference, right? People don't necessarily search on Google to find people like them. They search for answers. People are looking through YouTube, not necessarily to find people just like them, but to find answers. But when you have the answers and you also share that you have a place that people can come and go to, and yes, your social media accounts can start that process, but it's still a you to many situation. We want people to find each other, and that's what a community can do for them. People come for the content, but they stay for the community, says lots of very smart people. Number two, the business models are definitely different. When it comes to audience-based content that you are creating in business models, right? It's about attention. Right? I need to grab people's attention and hold it. And that can come through ads and search engine optimization. The business models come from courses and affiliate marketing and e-commerce and all that kind of stuff. And that favors fixed pricing. Whenever you charge for something that's more on an audience building based situation, it's going to be fixed pricing, like a course or a coaching program or something like that. Versus a community based situation, when it comes to the business model, it's definitely subscription. Right? It might be membership. There might be different tiers, a lower level, a higher level with access to certain things. Coaching and events and masterminds become a part of this too. And this favors, again, the holy grail of passive income, which is that recurring income that could come in, that predictable income. You have X number of members in month one. Cool. Let's add more members in month two. And now your income isn't replaced. It's added to from what you earned in month number one. A good example of somebody who's doing community really well is Steve over at nerdfitness.com. What I love about Steve and his website is it's very much an example that we use in the internet marketing industry as somebody who understands how to niche down, right? So Steve teaches people how to be fit and be well and eat well and be their best fit selves. But it's with a nerd tone to it. So a lot of his content uses Legos and Star Wars and a lot of this stuff. So he attracts the nerds in the audience, typically the really ones who are just, from 80s culture and video games and things like that. And that's his language. That's his culture. And he attracts the right people. He has hundreds of thousands of people in his community. And he has now coaching programs and an app. And literally as we speak, you want to talk about community, he is hosting an adult fitness camp for nerds. And I know a few people who are there right now, and they do a lot of fun activities to work out and stay fit, but they also have a lot of fun with each other and play some games. And that's happening as we speak because of this community that he has built. He could have just stopped with creating content and that's it. But he knows that the power in this is bringing these nerds together, myself being one of them, to find each other. And so we don't feel alone anymore. And we feel like we can talk fitness with people because we are too afraid to go to the gym and see the pumped up dude next to us, bench pressing our own weight. And so we can find each other and nerd out together. And that's the cool thing. Another way to think about this is the difference between a game like this, right? Super Mario Brothers, you choose one player and boom, you're going in. It's this like world that you're going through and you're stomping on Goombas and it's that sort of thing. It's a very one player game. Even if you press 2-player, you hand the controller to somebody else and now it's just them. There's no collaboration. There's no connection there when it comes to these kinds of video games. And when we are content creators, we're playing this kind of game, right? The linear game. But we want to play the game that's a little bit more like a network, right? And this is a different version of a game, World of Warcraft, where you are put into a world and you can interact with people and you can actually find guilds. I am Guild T of having done that in the past. My junior year of high school, I played this game and I made some of my best friends finding people through this video game, and we can all connect and nerd out with each other. And there's even now tools within this platform to find other people and create your guilds so you can go on quests together, right? It's definitely that nerdy, and I am definitely a part of that. Number 3, another big difference between audience building and community building is the user experience. This is a big part of it, right? When you talk about from the consumer's point of view, somebody who's consuming your audience-based, audience-building content, they're by themselves normally. They're listening to your podcast. They're reading your social posts. They are on the go, reading your blog or watching your videos, and they're on their own. They're consuming you as the guide, right? Which is still helpful. But when it comes to community building, this is where they feel like they're a part of something. There's a connection. I'm with people like me. You're being guided through that. And there's safety in seeking help in that particular place and in that particular situation. It's just like a level added onto feeling solo and consuming things kind of one-off. Now we can consume all these things one-off, but now talk about them, help each other out, and come together about that. When people are involved, they are invested. Let me say that one more time. When people are involved, they are invested. Along the same lines of user experience, communication is completely different. From a consumer's point of view, on the audience building side, it's comments. That's how they communicate with you. It's contact forms and maybe email. But when it comes to community and membership, it's replies and threads. It's a forum, a group, or a direct message from somebody who you know and is a part of this community with you. Conversations are the new comments. And I want to say that one more time. Conversations are the new comments. And when it comes to building memberships and communities, that's what you want to see. You want to see not comments, conversations happening. The transformation that is offered, very important when you're creating courses or any sort of material. The transformation is absolutely key, but it's different from what you might find inside a community. From a consumer's point of view, a person's transformation comes from learning something new and then implementing it. But then they move on. They get that thing and they move on, or they subscribe or follow for the next time. But it's that transformation that happens there based on the content that you're creating versus inside of your community. They learn something new, but now they feel more connected. They have somebody else to talk to who's gone through that with them or is going through that with them. If you've ever run a challenge for a certain period of days, and you have like a Facebook group or some other sort of community behind it, you'll know just the rush of what that's like to have people connected to each other who are going through the same thing. It's unmatched. It's the difference between doing Zumba at home by yourself and doing Zumba in a class and doing all those Zumba things together. You have that accountability. You have that support. You have the confidence and spirit, because in a group, that sort of vibe allows you to feel more energy versus just being on your own. And then you create memorable moments with each other, right? I have way more memorable moments with other people in my life versus memorable moments when I'm by myself. Maybe the only memorable moment I have by myself is when I was dumb and broke my arm when I was a kid, right? Because that was my own fault. But most of my memorable moments in life happen because of other people who are around me also enjoying those moments too. So keep that in mind. Are you creating opportunities for your audience to experience memorable moments with you and with each other? Or are you just creating content and leaving them to be? And in communities, when goals are hit, new goals are set. This is the cool thing. They're not like getting what they need and leaving. They're getting what they need and staying as a result, and also inviting new people in too. the market forces are absolutely changing and have changed, right? A lot of things have changed over time. Back in the day, it was all about content, and content was good. Now we are bloated because there's too much content, right? This is what it's like. It's just like feeding everybody everything and hoping that they, stick around and let's just hope for the best. But that's doing our audience a disservice if it's just all about feeding them content, because the connection's important and also the implementation of that content. Actually, my next book is literally about this idea that we're playing content tourists a lot as consumers, and we need to find a home to focus and go deep with. It's the difference between staying at a hotel for 2 days in a place and saying, yeah, I understood that place and I toured around, versus living there for 2 months in an Airbnb and really getting to know what that space is like. That's what we want people to experience when they come into our communities. People come for the content and they stay for the community, right? That's the difference between eating food like this. This is what we're doing. This is not how it should be now. Or eating food like this, right? Putting up a tent, your brand puts up a tent, and you can invite people in. And sure, maybe you don't have the fanciest cups. Go get the red Solo cups. And sure, maybe you don't have the fanciest plates. The tent is like a pop-up tent, and the chairs are just the chairs that you find in the auditorium, and the tables are those literal tables that you get at Costco. But you know what? That doesn't matter, because look at what we're looking at right now. People coming in to hang out with each other, to chat in their own little pockets of this tent, to connect with each other. Likely, I see a big whiteboard in the back. There's probably an announcement here and there, and that's you talking to your audience, but then leaving, because they're going to talk to each other. And this is of value. This is value in today's world. And not only will they come for the content and stay for the community, they might pay for the community too. So right now in our business, we have recurring income for the first time. Right now in our business, we have the best feedback that we've ever gotten. Literally every day, wins are coming in from people who wouldn't have gotten those wins otherwise. We have mastermind groups and connections happening inside of SPI Pro. We have challenges. And here is the craziest part. It's the least amount of work I've ever done now that it's set up. I mean, setting it up was a chore for sure, but it was worth it, because now the community is able to run on its own. Now, we do have people come in to help support the community and manage the community. That's really, really key. It's not turnkey, set and forget. It's set and let people find each other, but you still have to manage and facilitate. But, we have challenges every month. We have, cohorts that come in, and they have a little badge every time there's a new enrollment period, so they can find people who are in the same class as them. And then the alumni or the people who have been there for a while can find the rookies or the freshmen who come in and help them too. It just becomes this incredible situation. Now, if you are going to be going into community, one thing I would focus on would be to find the communities out there that you are a part of, and ask yourself, well, why do I love being here? Or why do I not love being here? What are the great things about this that you can absorb and siphon into what it is that you are doing? Another important key component of building communities is the onboarding process. And this is something that we've talked about extensively. We have a community-based YouTube channel that SPI is hosting called The Community Experience. There's also a podcast that talks about community as well. This is how invested we are in it. We are now teaching it. We're talking about it, and we're using our own advice. Onboarding is really key, because it's that first impression, right? That idea of, well, what do I do next? Or where do I go from here? You always want to, in that first 15 to 30 minutes after a person signs up to your community, even if it's a free community, you want a person to not have to wonder, well, what do I do next? Or where do I go from here? Inside of SPI Pro, and we've talked about this publicly as well, we've talked about the idea of helping people introduce themselves, but then what? Then looking at some successful students who have gone through before them, so that they can see that if they stick around, they're good to go. Cool, they see that. Where do we go next? And where do we go next? Where do we go next? And that way, a person's in there, and they're now already accustomed to the way things work and are more comfortable to post. So I would love to be here as a resource to answer any questions that you might have about community, because it is literally becoming a game changer in our business. We're seeing this in the industry. We're seeing it because of a reaction to what had happened during the pandemic, but we're also seeing it because I think this is what we've always known to be the case, that people wanted. We saw hints of this within Facebook groups, but of course, Facebook did its Facebook thing and is kind of ruining it a little bit. But now we have the opportunity, using tools like circle.so, to get in there and create it. And as an advisor, I can tell you that it is, I advise 10 different companies in the community and creator space. Circle is definitely the fastest growing one. And the reason I mention that is because it is a sign that this is what people are now using as something to supplement their business, or even like us, change their business model. And I know this is something that a lot of my students are now doing, and they're having the most fun with, because honestly, the connection that you have with your audience is absolutely key. And it's the thing that is often missing in a person's life when it comes to the niches that they're getting involved with and the information that they're consuming. It's who else is here with me learning this? You can step up to create that space for them, and your brand will benefit as a result. Now, plans for the future for SPI Pro, we actually just hired a couple more people to help manage the community, because it is growing like crazy right now, which is awesome. But down the road, when it becomes a little bit more safer, we're going to be doing in-person events, local events. We are going to be empowering members of SPI Pro to host their own local events for SPI Pro as well, to invite new people in to see what it's like. We do have an affiliate program for it too, which is launching very soon. And then finally, the cool thing about SPI Pro is, again, the fact that we now have this pool of amazing students, members, who now we are using for our public-facing content. So a lot of the guests now on SPI are members of SPI Pro, partly because we want to showcase the members of SPI Pro. It's always good to spotlight your members, but also it's a way to not directly promote SPI Pro, because these are members that you can now connect with, that people are listening to, that when a person hears on a podcast or in a YouTube video or on the blog, they now know that SPI Pro, it just becomes another touch point. But here's a person who's in it, who's actually winning because of it. And so we actually have shared our microphone on the podcast for our Friday episodes with members of SPI Pro. We bring them on to Ask Pat, our other podcast. We highlight them in videos. We allow them to teach workshops as well. And that only does nothing but bring the community even closer together. And remember, when you become that common denominator, it creates magic, right? It's just like a baseball game. If you imagine the home team losing by 3, but then hits the game-winning grand slam at the end, you start high-fiving and hugging people that you don't even know, because you're all there rooting for the same team. And you win together and you lose together, and it's just one of the most amazing things. And I hope this gives you some energy to explore this a little bit more, and to potentially turn it into something that can not just generate more revenue in your business, and recurring revenue at that, but gives you more fulfillment and happiness with how you serve your audience. Because to go from content to serving your audience is one thing, but to go from content to now community to connecting with your audience, and it's just on a whole new level. It's hard to put to words what it does, but it is one of the most fulfilling things we've ever done. And I'm so grateful, because we are changing our business model for this directly. But I hope this presentation gave you some insight on how it differs from audience building and how it could take it to the next level.
Yeah, this is so huge, because one of my biggest frustration points, and in the chat, let me know if this is you. Like, I love my people fiercely, like crazy fiercely love them. And when I go in to serve, when they're inside of a Facebook group, it's like rolling the dice. Maybe they'll see it. Maybe they won't. Maybe it'll serve them. Maybe they weren't on Facebook at that time and it never shows up for them. So they don't know that there's something there that can really move the needle for them, help them, serve them, etc. So I'd love to just ask you this question. As you made that transition from, and I need you to kind of like hear this, like Pat, as he usually does, was swimming upstream. Like, everybody's swimming this way. Pat's like, I'm going to go this way because I can't do what I want to do. And that's one thing that I love about you, is that like, you're so committed to your community, as am I, that you're like, this isn't doing it for me. I got to figure out something else. And Circle being the thing. So how is the transition over, and how is the big fear is, if I move, then the engagement will drop because they're not scrolling. So how would you say like the difference has been that in that direction? Yeah, I mean,
if we're talking moving people over from Facebook or another community over to something like Circle, the benefit of Facebook is we're all familiar with it. We're there already. Yeah. But that's also the curse of it. Yes. Right? We're there where everybody else is and all the other distractions are. And now we are at the whims of Facebook or Meta, and I don't want to pay them any money or pay them anything. Not that you have to pay for groups, but just like giving them anything of mine. I like, if you're housing your community on Facebook, you're playing in somebody else's sandbox. And at any moment in time, they can remove that sand or block it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So by you moving over to something like Circle, yes, it is a little bit of a hurdle for people because what is this? I don't know. The beauty of Circle specifically is it's so intuitive and very easy to use. There's a lot of other programs out there that, you have to take like a workshop to be able to figure out how to use. This is very familiar to people, but in a space that you as the creator can control the experience with. And it almost acts like a building block sort of situation where when you sign into Circle and you sign up, you go, okay, I want this feature, and this is what I want it to where I want it to go and where I want people to communicate. But you don't have to do everything, right? They have live streaming features and all these other things. You don't need that if you don't want it, and that's okay. You don't have to pull it in if you don't want to.
Yeah.
And you can make it your own. But the beauty of launching a community is if you're going to bring people over the Facebook or from Facebook over to something like Circle, bring a small group first, perhaps your most raving fans who would follow you anywhere, and have them come in there and start to shape what this community becomes for the rest. When you get their buy-in, then everybody else will want to come over too. And ultimately, getting off of Facebook, which we've done, we've cut the cord with Facebook, is you want to have a set date where that's going to be the last day that people will have access to it, because that last date creates a sense of urgency for people to come in. But you do need to sell it. You need to tell people, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And what is here that they can't get there? Yeah. And there are so many things that you could offer. And we've listed a whole bunch of things in our community-based content for different kinds of events that you can do or benefits that your students could have. But again, start small. And if you're launching a paid community, do a founders group launch first, get a little beta group in there, have them understand that it's not going to be as populated as it will be in the future, so that they can come in and break things and make things. And once you do that, it almost takes a life of its own, and it becomes this beautiful thing that now has a heartbeat, and it has soul, and it has culture.
Yeah.
And there's so many things you can do with it. I mean, there are people in there who are some of the best podcast guests we've ever had, because they're filtered. They're in there. We know who they are and what they've gone through. There are business partnerships that happen. There are partners for courses that we can create that are in there. It just becomes an amazing pool of people filtered from your audience, your top raving fans, all in one spot. And it every day becomes, they become even better fans because they're finding people like them there too.
I love that. And I love, as you're talking, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a micro habit, right? This is a micro habit. So instead of their micro habit going to this ever ending world of Facebook or somewhere like that, where they know that they're going to go left and they're going to, an hour of their day is going to be gone. You almost can link a micro habit with, like, okay, as soon as you drink your coffee, open SPI Pro, or open your Circle, whatever you're calling your Circle.
Yeah.
And they're in there and they're like, oh, now I'm feeding me. I'm not distracted. And they're very focused on the one thing that they needed to go in there for. So right. I am like Jazz. I'm thinking neuro coach certification. We've been talking about this for a while, moving the community over to there. And I think this is a great time to do it, because it's really about connection, right? It's connection is currency. And honestly, like, if you're in the online space, you're here to help. You're here to serve, as Pat's shirt says. So like, let's go do that thing instead of doing it around the edges. So Pat, as per usual, thank you for just coming and sharing everything that will help move the needle and really make impact. I appreciate you so much.
I told you I wasn't going to make slides, and then I ended up creating a whole load of them, because I wanted to make sure we understood what was going on. But thank you most of all for putting this event together, because as always, I just see you always come from a place of service at a time of need for everybody, and to bring all these amazing creators together to help out. I just want to commend you and thank you publicly here for that. And I know I speak for everybody with that too. So thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Have an amazing day. I appreciate you so much. Bye,
thank
Pat.
you.
Thank you so much for listening today. Hey, down in the show notes, the doors are open to the Sync Neuro Coach certification. This is a coaching certification for those who really want to know the right way to coach and get the fast pass, just like at Disney, on cracking the Coach six-figure code, so they know the exact how-tos in order to go from 0 to 5K months to 6 figures and then on to 7. There are steps you got to take. It's all in the certification. Down below are the links, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now.